From food to diet to nutrition to every step along the way, the system has been corrupted, abused, and manipulated.
Backed by popular demand, a gentleman I'm now really proud to call a personal friend, Brigham Buhler is back. Brigham started out as a drug rep for Big Pharma and quickly learned all the evils that Big Pharma and subsequently big insurance are creating in impeding our ability to get the healthcare that we need.
The insurance companies and the big pharmaceutical companies are two of the biggest, baddest mobsters out there.
Yeah,
I mean,
Pharma
it's scary.
Cartel. He ended up founding two companies, one called Revive and another called Ways to Well, in an attempt to provide us with accessible and affordable health care. And Brigham is going to expose to you all the ways that your health care is being corrupted quite literally by big business.
And those are the tactics to keep you from using your insurance that you pay so dearly for. Deny, delay, obstruct.
They profit off of making you sick, but there's a way out, and he's going to teach us all about it today. So do not scroll away from this show. You need to see it more than any show I think I've done to date.
Keeping It Real with Jillian Michaels.
Brigham Buhler, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
How are you?
I'm good. It's been a wild, wild ride with everything that's going on with now healthcare is being politicized, which is interesting. It's become a big hot topic with the election this year, which I did not see coming. So I'm excited.
I didn't see it coming either. And both of us are good friends with Callie and Casey Means. And I had Callie back not that long ago. And I just felt despair.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, this is never getting better. We're never going to fix this. There's too much money in politics from healthcare and food and pharma and whatever. And he was like, it's gonna be okay. And little did I know he'd been working on this thing with RFK and trying to put him and Trump together to make America healthy again. And he's got his coterie of what's the League of Superheroes? I remember the Wonder Twins.
It's like they're building the Avengers.
The Avengers,
Unite,
the Justice League is what I remember. Will you be my other Wonder Twin? Because I want to be the Wonder Twins with you.
I love it.
Because he said Tulsi was Wonder Woman. So can we be the Wonder Twins? But I don't have. Will you be my Wonder Twin?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So you've become a massive rock star, especially to the people who are somewhat familiar with how to empower their health and their wellness. Remind anybody who has not heard or seen you on Rogan numerous times. I won't even bring up the stuff we've done together because it pales in comparison, but you're everywhere and for good reason. Who are you? What do you do?
Man, that's a tough question to answer, actually. But
I'm a sexy guy.
I started out in healthcare right out of college. I was a drug rep and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and I went into that sector expecting it to be something else. This is 2000, and so back then we didn't really know, but pharmaceuticals was a good job. That was something you should have been proud of. And I got into that, and it didn't take long, even as a naive kid, to begin to see the dark side of that job and that industry. And I wanted out pretty quickly, and I pivoted and exited to go work for a surgical company called Stryker, where I worked with some of the best and brightest surgeons in the country for an array of issues. Any minimally invasive surgical procedure, I covered the Texas Medical Center. And I saw the dark side of that industry. And then I lost a brother to the opioid crisis, and I broke away and started my entrepreneurial career in healthcare, where I was no longer working for any of these big industries and was trying to carve out my own little space. And it started with retail pharmacies and blood labs and just evolved into every stone I looked under was another rattlesnake. And I'm just like,
such a good
how
analogy.
many rattlesnakes are there in this space that are going to come between patients and patient outcomes? It was mind-boggling. And so, I mean, that's the short story of, I guess, what is it now, 15 years later of being in healthcare. I started at 20, I'm 44, so 14 years or later of going through that space. Sorry, 24 years later, brain freeze.
Um, I think that not to take a weirdo spiritual turn here, but I definitely think we go through these things obviously to make us who we are, and your voice is unique in the space because of the personal component, losing your brother, your own health struggles, which we've talked about before, working in various aspects of the industry. You are a unique voice to educate and inspire. And we've talked a ton on my show with different people about the evils of big farming, the evils of big food, the evils of big pharma. What I had never heard about prior to your voice was the evil of big insurance.
Mhm,
And I want these exposés so that people wake up.
mhm.
They need to wake up. They need to know what's going on. They need to function in the world eyes open in order to then make the right choices and do the things that you and Callie and Casey, and hopefully myself included in this mix of people, recommend to get better. You said to me once, Jillian, if you think big pharma's bad, big insurance rips off their head and shits down their throat. They're nothing, like a megalodon to a great white. Start there.
Yeah, that was one of the big, jarring, shocking things I saw because coming from Big Pharma, I can tell you that there is truth in that they try to grow a disease state, right? They do, like when I was a drug rep, I was taught, you know, the indications for a drug may be here, this niche, but your job is to educate the clinician and grow the practice and grow the prescription writing. And so you begin to dabble in stretching that niche. Does that make sense? So if it's a bipolar or schizophrenia drug, you know, they would train reps to come in and instead of just sticking to this product is indicated for somebody who is diagnosed bipolar, blah, 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 like very specific indication from the FDA, right? But then you were tasked with going to dinner with that clinician on the big pharma side and saying, hey, doc, I want you to think about that patient that may come into your clinic yesterday or in the next week or two that isn't sleeping as well. Maybe the wife that says she wakes up in the middle of the night with her thoughts racing and starts cleaning the house, you know, starts going to couldn't sleep at night because of stress and anxiety. That may be your bipolar patient. These are the like talk tracks that they would teach us when I was a 20-year-old kid to grow the patient. So even though these little handouts they gave us that were printed material approved by the FDA, the talk track we were taught was nothing to do with that material. And that was almost just like a loophole. And so there is that problem of big pharma. And a lot of people know about that one. So
Yeah, let's
I don't
stay
want to
there.
beat
Not
that
actually
horse
that
dead.
part is not a common narrative. Can we stay there for a
Yeah, yeah.
second?
So what happens when and this is 20 years old, so I'm sure it's evolved by now. When I was a device rep or a drug rep and I got hired, I was in Waco, Texas, right out of college.
Wow.
They gave me a 20-year-old kid, a $20,000 a month expense account, use it or lose it. And they gave me a list of all the biggest doctors. And every week I knew exactly what those doctors prescribed. I saw their prescribing habits, their prescriptions, and they task you with a call pattern of going in and moving the needle on the prescription and prescribing habits of those clinicians. And so when I started, they said, you're going to go find the 20 biggest doctors in your geographic region and you're going to become their best friend. I don't care if you go to their kids' soccer games, baseball, whatever you need to do, and you got a $20,000 a month expense account, go build a relationship with this person. Now, I don't want to make it sound all dark because when you're a kid and you're naive and you're right out of school and you're proud to have this job and you're meeting with some of the brightest minds from academia that are giving you lectures on why this new blockbuster drug is
Yeah,
going to
you think you're
help
saving the
so many
world,
people,
right?
you think things are great. And it took me even probably 18 months to realize that some of what we were doing just didn't feel right. Like I would be talking about these antidepressants and anti-anxiety drugs, and I hated selling those drugs because my other primary drug was Cialis. It sells itself. A 36-hour Viagra, you're Elvis Presley walking into those clinics. People love you. Like, I mean, with the toe fungus girl was stuck waiting outside for 3 hours, but I would come in and they just wave me in. And so when I would have to talk about the antidepressant drugs and doctors would tell me, hey, Brigham, I trust you. Like, you seem like an honest kid, but I'm going to tell you, I've had patients gaining 20, 30 pounds on this drug. And I would report it back to
On
the company.
Cialis?
And no, this is with the antidepressants and schizophrenia drugs like
Oh,
Zyprexa.
okay.
For
Yeah.
the whole career I had at Eli Lilly, they lied to us and told us, you need to tell the clinician that the weight gain is because these people went from not being hungry, being manically depressed, being inactive, to all of a sudden they're up and about, they're eating again, their hunger's coming back, they're living again. That's why they're hungry. They're living again. And then you hear the presentations of the Sackler family and how they convinced doctors that patients weren't getting addicted to opioids. Patients were experiencing breakthrough pain. How dare you question that patient and make them feel attacked for seeking higher dosages and more opioids? But the truth was, it was all being swept under the rug. And this has happened repeatedly over and over again throughout history with pharmaceutical companies. And that's where I look at it and I go, I mean, we could go back. Yeah, I broke this down for Joe and I go, but right, this is today, right? But let's go back to like World War II. During World War II, Bayer, a major pharmaceutical company, Bayer, literally worked with the Third Reich to
I
test
remember you said
their
this.
drugs
Mhm.
on Jewish women and children.
And killed them all,
And they
right?
killed them all. 150 something people died during the clinical trial. And this is the history of Bayer. And then you go, well, that was World War II, right? It got better in the 80s. They suppressed HIV medications and their accessibility to the people of Africa. They sued compounding pharmacies for trying to compound and make a drug that Big Pharma was charging $14,000 a month for that nobody in Africa could afford. Compounding pharmacies attempted to compound it and wholesalers to provide it for literally $100-something a year. And it could have helped save thousands and thousands of lives. But Big Pharma sued everyone involved in an attempt to shut it down because they were so worried about competition. But it's like, who are you competing against? The people are dying. Like, there's no way to help them. They can't afford $14,000 a year for a drug that shouldn't be costing them $14,000 a year.
Well, speaking of, you brought up something I plan on getting to, but since it's on the table now, let's talk about compounding pharmacies for a second because you see, we both know I have a bias against GLP-1 drugs.
Yeah.
Put that
Yeah.
aside because that's irrelevant to this conversation. People who want them are finding them extraordinarily expensive and unavailable, so they are turning to compounding pharmacies. And you're seeing like counterfeit Ozempic
Mhm.
kills
Mhm.
so-and-so and so-and-so, and God knows what you're getting. You could read the most ridiculous headlines like rat piss and cyanide. It just,
Yeah.
I'm obviously
Yeah.
embellishing. However, I don't think getting drugs from telehealth, I think they should go to a place like Ways 12, have your doctor who works with your company,
Mhm.
who works with the compounding pharmacy help you out. But that's simply because I want the physician to know the patient's health history.
Yeah.
That's why it's not the compounding pharmacy. Can you talk about what is a compounding pharmacy? What are the differences? Because there are differences between them. How do you find the one that's got the highest standards?
Mhm. So
Go.
yeah, compounding pharmacy can get very nuanced. There are levels of accreditation. And so the most typical highest stringent level is a sterile compounding pharmacy,
Okay.
meaning you can make injectables like testosterone or peptide therapies. And those are held to a very high standard. And so one of the misnomers is if it comes with the approval of the FDA, it is safe.
Oh, I thought that was
And
the case.
and
That's
so
not true.
where this gets to be unbelievably challenging without going down a whole diatribe is if we're talking about medical equipment, 92% of the medical equipment put in your body, utilized on you in the operating room, has never had a clinical trial, never had a human trial at all. It's all made it through a process called the 510K approval process, which is a loophole that the FDA gave med device manufacturers in the 70s. And the idea was that less than 8% of products that would go into our system would make it through this process. It flipped. Now 90+% is making it in through the 510K approval process. Here's why that's important. It's like comparing a Samsung flip phone to the newest iPhone. And you're still getting new products into the OR based off the Samsung flip phone technology. Does that make sense?
Oh,
And
God,
so,
yeah.
like hips, knees, you go from a metal on plastic to a plastic on plastic to a metal on metal. All that evolution never went through human safety trials. So as soon as they launched into the marketplace a metal
A
on metal hip
prosthetic
and
hip.
thousands of people put those hips in, they begin to shard off metal and create metal poisoning in patients, giving them dementia. There's hundreds of OB-GYN products that have been recalled. Less than 2% of adverse events are reported. And this is that sector. So now let's go to the pharmaceutical sector.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Never mind. Keep going. I'll
Yeah.
come back
So
to it.
then,
I'll come back
so
to it.
but the point of this is to just make people aware, question everything. Don't think just because something is FDA approved that it is necessarily safe. Because let's talk about prescription drugs. Eli Lilly has a shortage right now for its GLP-1s and an array of different products. Why? Because multiple of its facilities have been shut down by the FDA for violations. Then what's happened is a large percentage of the big pharmaceutical companies have begun to outsource their manufacturing overseas to India and China. Why? Because if the FDA wants to inspect it, they have to give 3 months notice. They can't just show up. You're going into a foreign country. You have to negotiate with that country, come in, and then hope that 3 months later, by the time you get in there, that they haven't burned all the records or hidden it, which is what they've done. There's a whole book called Bottle of Lies that breaks down an investigative journalist, all of these facilities. There are literally, I think, over 2,000 major pharmaceutical manufacturing facilities that have
Sick
not
to my
been
stomach.
investigated by the FDA in over 5 years. 5 years. The FDA has been in my building 3 times in 18 months. I mean, it's nonstop because, and I'm not saying it's because they're attacking compounding pharmacies at all. What's
But
happening
they
is
are, though. Come on,
when,
you see it every day. For the same reason you were talking about HIV,
yeah.
they are.
Well, Big Pharma
'Cause
is, and
yeah,
Big
'cause they're
Pharma
taking the
carries such a
money.
big stick. So the reason there's all this bad PR around compounding pharmacies is Big Pharma's creating the PR. They sue. So like right now, Eli Lilly sued my pharmacy, and they make statements that then they release through their PR branch and try and put into the public eye. And I have no way to redact or rebuttal those comments because none of those media outlets are going to interview us to hear our rebuttal. In their rebuttal, their whole comment is basically compounding pharmacies are dangerous. There's no medical guidance or oversight, and they're making these drugs in a garage, is how they're trying to make it
Yes,
sound.
that's
What
the
they're not
narrative.
telling the public is these are not, just because a product's not FDA approved does not mean it's not FDA investigated, right? And so the FDA does provide oversight for compounding pharmacies. Every ingredient we buy and source is an FDA approved ingredient. Every ingredient that we buy that is FDA approved is then independently third party verified to prove that it is the dosage and requirement that we say it is. Then after we compound this ingredients and put it all together, we then independently verify it again through a third party. And all of those validation tests are kept in a file. And when the FDA comes into our building, we sit down and show them everything. And our head of my compliance and regulatory, because we have over 300 employees. Like last time I was on your podcast, it was 200.
Oh
Now
my
we already
God,
have over
Brig.
300. And
Congratulations.
people don't understand, like, it's because insurance and big pharma are abusing this system more and more. And compounding pharmacies are the only way a lot of people can afford the medications. It's not a lesser medication. In fact, the beauty is I don't want to dwell on GLP-1s, but here's an example.
No,
One
do
of
it
the
'cause it's a
major
perfect
issues with the
example.
GLP-1, one is the price,
Yes.
right? They're
Yes.
price gouging the American people, the taxpayers, and the federal government.
Yeah.
And the second is they
Titrating
don't
it.
have an ability to titrate up and titrate
I knew you
down
were gonna say
because
that.
it's a one-size-fits-all approach.
Yes.
And to manufacture that requires a shift in your manufacturing focus. And at Big Pharma's level, you're looking for the biggest dollars as fast as possible, as long as possible. And compounding allows us to make compounds unique and proprietary to the patient. It allows us to sit down with a patient and try to make a blend that will work for their metabolism, their size, their stature, and their goals. And everybody's different. And it's not GLP-1s, like testosterone's an example. So many guys in America have said, and they don't even know this until I talk to people. They go, I don't take testosterone because I don't want to stick myself with a big, huge needle, and I'm scared of needles. Why do they have to stick themselves with a big needle? It's because the generic brand testosterone that's available at CVS is made with a thick viscosity. We compound it with a grapeseed extract, which makes it super thin, which allows you to push it through an insulin needle. And the reason that's important is because now we're not only saving you from having to deal with some big horse needle that nobody wants to inject with, but we also allow you to mimic your natural biorhythms and inject more often, like a few days a week, to mimic your natural testosterone,
Peter Attia was
which is
talking
a
about
better
that.
way to go. And
Yes. So you get
that,
the
again,
huge
just
spike
not
and the huge
available.
crash.
Correct.
Yes.
And then the other dirty secret they don't tell the public is in a hospital system, what they have it called as a crash cart with key things to bring you back to life in the event that you seize on the table or die. Almost all of those compounds are made by compounding pharmacies. Most of what's in a hospital system is made by compounding pharmacies. Compounding pharmacies have been around hundreds of years. They're unbelievably safe. They're unbelievably regulated. And the truth of the matter is they're hurting the pocketbooks of Big Pharma, and they're a thorn in the side of Big Pharma. And Big Pharma has a big platform, a big voice, and they'll just sue you and beat you into submission. And that's what they've done with
And it
us. Like
works. The
we've
pharma
already spent
cartels.
hundreds of thousands
Yes.
of dollars
Yes.
in litigation that's frivolous for making that. What they're suing my pharmacy for is literally making drugs that the FDA has on a backorder shortage list that they have requested compounding pharmacies to make. And this is a pain point for me because it's like FDA, federal government, why don't you help us out? Like help these compounding pharmacies. You're asking us to make these products for the American people, but then you give us no protection and leave us to fight a fight on our own with 800-pound gorillas that have unlimited pockets and will just try to destroy your business through litigation is essentially how it works.
I've experienced that not in this particular area because I'm obviously not a compounding pharmacist and I don't own a medical facility. But that game of just suing you into submission or saying horrible things about you
Mhm.
until it's just not worth it anymore is a very effective tool.
Yeah.
It's a very effective tool. Is there any scenario where somebody should be wary of a compounding pharmacy? Are they all created the same? Telehealth versus, tell me, did I get that
My
wrong?
challenge with a lot of and it's not everything is a tool. And the problem with tools is they can be used for good or bad.
Okay.
And so there are compounding pharmacies out there that I'm sure there's a boom. And so when there's a boom, it attracts bad players. And there's a boom right now, and it's mainly because of GLP-1s. The historical stuff that's been out there, that's been compounded for the last 15 years, that are bread and butter compounds, that's one thing. The GLP-1 boom has created like shops that are popping up everywhere with people just compounding GLP-1s. And I'm not here to say they're under the same FDA guidelines.
They
They're going to get
are.
investigated if they're
Okay.
a sterile pharmacy. But
Okay,
it
'cause I
doesn't
thought there was
mean
like a separate
even like at Lilly,
certification.
mistakes were made, right?
Chapstick, forgive me.
Lily's facility that got shut down, it was like barefoot people in the sterile room.
Oh,
Like, I mean, it's
God.
wild. I
Good.
can send you the article.
Good
And it was a
grief.
whistleblower that exposed it. And
Oh,
Lilly ended up settling with the individual in the lawsuit, but that's why the FDA came in and hammered them. Was when they investigated, they reaffirmed that a lot of the whistleblowers complaints were valid.
Okay.
But I don't think all compounding pharmacies are equal. The same way I don't think all pharmaceutical manufacturing facilities are created equal. I look at it and I say, all I know is what I can control. And I know we're in, Houston, Texas. The FDA has been in our building 3 times in 18 months. We validation test every product that comes in and out of our facility. We validation test all the ingredients that go into our products. We then have literally our highest paid employee at the pharmacy is a former employee of the FDA who's a chemist and a quality control specialist. And he helps make sure that all of our protocols and procedures put safety first. But even in any element, there's the human element. You can never say that there's no risk of a mistake or an adverse. I mean, anything can happen. And that's why I think it's crucial for people to take prescription medicines with caution, regardless of who makes it. That's my message is whether it's a compounding pharmacy or Pfizer, it's not any safer or less safe. It's just not. And if
Right.
somebody tells you that it's safer because the FDA approved it, I would say ask the millions of people who have died of opioids. I mean, to this day, every day, a 747 jet worth of people die of opioid abuse every day. So that crisis was created by Big Pharma. And the previous crisis, the Valium pandemic that people don't remember, happened in the 60s, and that was the same family, the Sacklers, created the Valium crisis and had to testify in front of Congress, and they got away with no criminal charges. Then they repeated it with the
Yeah.
opioid crisis and OxyContin.
Yeah.
And
Pretty much got away with the
you got away with it
fine, but
again.
yeah.
And so
And they pay over time, like the interest on it pays off the amount they owe. Like they get to keep the money and pay it off over time. And it's bananas. It's bananas.
Yeah, and we talked with RFK today. Like, I think it's the 3rd leading cause of death in America right now is misuse of prescription medicines, like misdiagnosis, misuse. It's like one of the top risk factors is because people are ODing or giving the wrong doses or having adverse events. And
Back up.
but
What?
yeah,
Can you
that's
give me
what
an
Bobby was talking about today.
okay, hang on a second. I missed that part. I completely missed him saying that.
It's misdiagnosis and misutilization. So whether, and this is where we could get into the GLP-1s. This is an area I absolutely agree with you on. There is zero doubt that they are being overutilized, they are being overprescribed, and they are being utilized as a first line defense. And that should not be the case. Like I say that if you were wanting to get on a GLP-1, I would ask, has anyone ever done a metabolic test on you? Have you had a VO2 max? Have you had a DEXA? Do you know how much lean muscle mass you have? Do you know how much body fat you have? Because attempting to write a GLP-1 without talking about diet, lifestyle, and nutrition is like brushing your teeth while eating Oreos. It's totally counterintuitive. And
Right.
these telemedicine companies, and Waste to Well does a ton of telemedicine. We won't prescribe a GLP-1 until you've done a full workup, had comprehensive blood work, and have gone to a consult with a nutritionist. And we provide the nutritionist consult for free because it's important to talk about your diet and your lifestyle. Because even when you go to the side effects of the GLP-1s, people saying they're losing muscle. Well, what is your diet? If you went from 3,000 calories a day with some protein to 1,000 calories a day of Snickers and popcorn,
Yeah.
you're going to cannibalize muscle disproportionately. You're not getting the nutritional needs of your body.
Yep.
And that's where I believe taking a deeper dive and getting away from this sick care system that is literally write a drug, push you out the door. We'll see you in 6 months. That's healthcare now. It's not really healthcare. It's really more of
Sick care.
yeah, it's
Yep.
it's a revenue cost center generating, for the hospitals, for the primary care practices, for the insurance companies, for the big pharmaceutical companies. Everyone is making money every touch point along the way. And there's nobody going, well, wait a second. How do we heal these people? How do we fix the root cause? And the answer to that is because a lot of it comes down to diet, nutrition, and lifestyle.
Right. Of
But
course.
there's not a ton of money in that. How do you patent that?
Not only that, the narrative goes against it.
Yeah.
It just does. And this is where I go on my little tirades of, nah, you're healthy at any size, or
Yeah.
oh no, obesity is a disease. You've got no hope here except our drugs. This is just what I spend so much time calling bullshit on.
Yeah.
But the problem is they'll trot out some, person with an MD. This is going to be interesting. I have a debate coming up on News Nation because I got in a fight with Dan Abrams over this. And he's like, well, all the doctors disagree with you about Ozempic. And I said, who are all the doctors? Because I think I talked to more doctors than you've probably met in a lifetime over the course of 1 month.
Yeah.
And I've got Callie and Dr. Ken Berry coming on with me. So we can't play but you don't have an MD behind your name game. Like,
Yeah.
I've got an MD, person who specializes in policy and worked for big food and big pharma. Now, will you give me this path to talk about lifestyle as
Yeah.
well? Like, I'll satisfy these two requirements. But they shut that narrative down at every opportunity. It's like, oh, that's a pipe dream.
Yeah.
You'll never be able to get control of this.
Mm-hmm.
And then, God forbid, they work with an independent pharmacy and medical company that have the cash pay model like you have at Ways to Well, then they try to ruin you.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to prevent disease.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do we put this guy out of business?
We have people think we have a prescription problem, but what we really have is a lifestyle and diet problem showing itself as a drug problem. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
It's not. There are fundamentally huge challenges to the world we live in now, and that's where it is tough because it is this double-edged sword, and that's where I struggle with it. Like I've argued with Joe. Joe hates the GLP-1s, and my argument was
He does? One more thing I love him for.
I've also seen the positives of it, and we prescribe it and we utilize it. But I think it's overprescribed, it's overutilized, and people aren't diagnosing the root cause, and they're not taking a look under the hood before they just say, "Oh, let's swap the motor." You know, like let's have a deep conversation and understand your family history, your diet, your nutrition. How much lean muscle mass do you have? Do you even know how many grams of protein you should be eating a day? Has anyone ever talked to you about that? In the existing healthcare space, that's not going to happen because they've got 7 minutes, like I said earlier,
You're right.
with a primary care in America. That primary care has to see 40 other people. They've got to get you in and out of there. You walk in, none of those tests are going to happen. One, because the insurance companies aren't going to cover it.
Here we go. Talk about this test
and
for
then
me.
two,
Yep,
we've
here we
created an environment where the patient is like, well, just write me a drug to fix my problem. And we've set that patient up for that failure. We have as a society because that's what our model does.
You talk about predictive. So that's part of the 3 solutions you talk about: predictive, proactive, private. Predictive, can you discuss the tests that you're doing and why a doctor who takes insurance can't do them and how dangerous that is?
Yeah. So even as simple as a comprehensive blood panel, so many patients go, "Oh, my doctor pulls my blood work." Or they'll say, "Can I just send you my doctor's blood work? I don't want to pay for blood work." And we don't make any money off the blood work. It's all outsourced to Quest. All we do is take the data and put it into our AI algorithms and then review it with a clinician and do a deep dive. And we look at over 70 biomarkers. And that's what a lot of these longevity-based clinics are doing now.
Yep.
It's not rocket science. It's what we should have been doing all along. But what happens is every year when we haven't even got into the insurance yet, but what I was talking about, the insurance being this, megalodon compared to a great white, every year the insurance companies are going to peel back and cover less and less and charge you more and more. United Healthcare made $360 billion last year. Billion with a B. If you look at the pharmacy benefit managers, CVS Health, this is a pharmacy benefit manager supposed to be driving down the cost of medicine. They made over $330 billion. You don't make those numbers providing people with great, efficacious care at a budget-friendly price. Unfortunately, that's just not what that system's built to do. You make that through marking up more and more every year what the copays and deductibles and out-of-pocket expenses are for the patient and their employer and covering less. And so what patients used to get, in the 70s and 80s was, a clinician drives to their house with their leather bag and spends 45 minutes with the family and knows everyone and does a deep dive and does a full panel and looks at you and tries to truly help you and your family. What they get now is 7 minutes with a primary care that's overwhelmed, underpaid, understaffed, barely making a living. There's a massive shortage in primary cares. It's headed over a cliff. They're expecting a 30% reduction. It's the most thankless job, and their hands are tied. So when I owned a blood lab, I went out and educated clinicians on some of these cutting edge tests, and insurance covered them for a brief stint. Within 6 months, the insurance carriers, they have algorithms and AI that'll process everything and read and see how much expenditures have gone up. And they started sending nasty letters to the doctors saying, we do not want you to pull this comprehensive blood work on our patients anymore. If you continue to do this, we'll consider revoking your contract. And if you're a primary care in the state of Texas or anywhere and you lose one big insurance payer, you're essentially out of business. And so what do you think your primary care is going to do? They're instantly going to stop doing those tests.
Right.
And there's dozens of those tests that we could be doing that.
Give me an example of one.
Well, one would be comprehensive blood work. Another one that would be examples of pharmacogenetic, which I know we talked about last time. Pharmacogenetic test is a simple cheek swab that identifies which type of cytochrome P450 variants you have, which is just a gene marker. And it lets us know, hey, Jillian is not going to be able to metabolize an opioid, or Jillian is a ultra slow metabolizer and you could kill her if you prescribe her an opioid. And this allows us to assess all of this before moving into prescribing a drug or a treatment modality. A gene carrier test for pregnant women. The gold standard was 30 when I started as a device rep, and now it's back to 35 last I heard. It may even be higher. It's not because it's what's better for the patient and the mother. It's because it's what's better for the insurance's pocketbook.
Right.
And they have such a stranglehold on the hospital systems and the pharmacies and everybody within their network that they can control. They set the price, they set the reimbursement rate, they control when you get paid, how you get paid, and then they put pressure on the patient through creating bigger out-of-pocket copays and deductibles. And so they intimidate the patient out of getting comprehensive blood work.
They intimidate you can't even get reimbursed, this is a sidebar, but we have insurance. It's like Florida Blue. We kept our doctors in California. I don't know if that matters. And all of them, like yourself, because they're great, are not in network.
Mm-hmm.
So a mammogram you can submit. I didn't submit my Gallery test for cancer because I knew they weren't going to cover it. But I submitted my mammogram. I submitted my wife's mammogram, the pelvic ultrasounds. Brig, it's been 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you didn't put the form, you didn't put the code, you didn't fill out this, you didn't do that. To the point that you're like, I'm friggin' fighting about $1,500. I don't give a fuck more.
Yeah.
They make it
They wear you down.
I said to my business partner, I'm like, I don't know. Is there just like major medical? Because this is bonkers. Like we're wasting money. We're spending $500 for what? Like they can never, unless I go to somebody in the system and then they won't do the care. They won't take the tests for me that I want taken. Speaking of one that's really quantifiable, can you talk about the cancer test that you're doing where you can see up to 7 years out if somebody's developing cancer? No, half the people will not even have heard of this. Because
a lot of these tests, because they're not covered by insurance, aren't like traditionally adopted in the insurance model. But there's a cancer screening test. So one of the things we were talking about is on today's hike with RFK is we know that 80% of first responders at some point will be diagnosed with cancer. 80%.
Awful.
That's insane. So why would we not proactively screen at minimal our firefighters who are in these cancerous environments all the time? That way we can get ahead and prevent it from moving from a cancer diagnosis to a cancer death, because early diagnosis is one of the keys to helping that individual win the battle against cancer. And the sooner we can diagnose, the
large
better.
part of the cure.
And there's now
detection.
amazing blood tests that are offered by multiple different labs, but that can tell us up to 7 years in advance if you have any early signs of cancer. And then we would repeat that test annually. And I was just saying I don't own that lab. This is just something we do at our practice. I
Yep.
have no finance. I don't even make a profit off that test. We just do it because it's the right thing to do. And if people can afford the test and it makes sense for them, or they were worried, or they have a family history of cancer. But I was just arguing that if you're a civil servant for like protecting your fellow man or woman, why are we not offering these tests to these people who are on the front lines for us every day and helping them live a longer, healthier life?
I don't
And it,
understand. Where's the outrage over it, though? It's like that
yeah,
Cali conversation. If we had all of the fervor that we throw at GLP-1s or whatever, all this,
mhm.
and we put it towards prevention, towards stopping disease, towards demanding better. But look, where's the
There's no, and
outrage?
what's insane
'Cause
is
there's no
I think
knowledge either,
people,
I don't
what you
think,
said
big.
earlier, the cop out is it's like so many topics.
Yes.
Well, we'll just
Yeah.
never be able to fix it.
Yes.
Well, and
Yes.
it's like I don't have delusions of grandeur. It's like let's start small. Let's get proactive and predictive. What if I can build a life raft for people? And that was the original goal of Waste Well, was I'm going to build a life raft. I've been behind the curtain. I know they're never going to get this level of care. And when I started it, patients didn't
This
understand
level of care.
how
They're
corrupt the
not getting
system
on the
was.
island,
I know.
like,
I
the
know.
level. I mean, you act as though they're a few, door
Because
hallways
they
away.
deny, they delay, and they obstruct. And those are the tactics to keep you from using your insurance that you pay so dearly for. Deny, delay, obstruct. Try and put as many obstacles and make it as painful as possible for you to get in with that specialist or to get that further review. And then I'll go a step further to say healthcare has become very siloed, very niche. And so when you go to a primary care and you ask a question, anything beyond cough, cold, sneeze, flu, or an antidepressant or an Adderall, they're going to push you to an internist, right? And now you're in the system waiting 2, 3, 4 months to get in with that specialist because the primary care can only focus on this. And so much of their medical training is antiquated within 6 months of them leaving medical school. And it's just so I say all that to lay the ground. I think the future is large language models, artificial intelligence, monitoring you 24/7. That's what we've been working on at Ways to Well. So I have
Cool.
an AI bot named Alan the Alien, and he's literally going to monitor your REM sleep, your heart rate variability. We're going to tie that in with your DEXA, your VO2 max. We're going to tie that in with your blood work and your biomarkers. Alan, this AI will know what date you started treatment, your family history, your genetics, all of these variables, and begin to calculate your health score and your longevity score. Peter talks a lot about this, and
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Peter Attia. One of the things he says is, why aren't we quantifying and qualifying like our health periodically and assessing it? So like in business, if you're going to build a business, you say, I need to hit these quarterly numbers. I need to reach this level. I need to have a strategy and a game plan to get there. If your goal is to live to be 100, and we know that you're going to lose bone mineral density at this rate, and you're going to lose lean muscle mass at this rate, and we know all of that data,
Right.
we can begin to help guide you and drive health span. So I think that
Prevent
it's a stretch when
this
people say we're going to
accelerated
drive your
deterioration.
lifespan,
I see.
because I'm not saying we're there yet, but I think the world will be there, not waste. I think in general we're headed that way.
Absolutely.
But we start with driving health span, because the difference between somebody who lives to be a centenarian and somebody who dies at the average American life expectancy is the onset of chronic disease. So how do we slow or stop the onset of chronic disease? You start by having a fucking conversation. Like that's a good starting point about diet, nutrition, and lifestyle. And then you can't quantify what you don't measure. Why aren't we measuring all of these aspects of this person's health? Their bone mineral. You're an example. You're an amazingly fit woman, but you're a small bone frame. One of your big risk factors as you age is going to be bone mineral density and bone mineral density
Runs in the
decline.
family too.
And then what can we do to
Yeah.
assess that and protect you and insulate and do everything we can along the way to know if we're headed towards a brittle bone or a potential issue? And it's just awareness. Like through knowledge is power. And a lot of times people say, well, man, I have anxiety. I don't really want to know. if I told you that I could save you from a chronic disease that would end your life 5 years earlier, you wouldn't
Painfully.
wanna know?
Yeah.
Like, we could help you, and this isn't unique to Ways to Well. These are technologies and tools that are available in healthcare today. They're just not readily utilized because most of these diagnostic tools are not covered by
By
insurance,
insurance.
and people only know the insurance model. And so they obstruct, they do all those things that we just discussed, but then in addition to that, they profiteer off the disease, which is what Callie and Casey are doing an amazing job of exposing.
Right.
And their focus is more on the pharmaceutical side, but when you dig in, the insurance companies themselves are making billions of dollars
So
off of
hard to
people being
comprehend
sick.
this. Even the question RFK
Yeah.
asked you is the question I asked you.
Yeah.
Well, how are they making money when they're the ones that are paying for the drugs?
Yeah.
And this is the mind blower right here.
Yeah. So there is, I don't know how deep you want me to go, but
Go.
there's
Go.
an entity called a pharmacy benefit manager, and 5 pharmacy benefit managers
I'm
control
gonna get comfortable.
almost all of the
I
prescription
know
medicines.
this is intense. I know I'm gonna shut up and
Yeah.
just go.
They control almost all the prescription medical coverage in the world and in the United States. And these pharmacy benefit managers were put in place to help drive down the cost of medicine and be essentially a bad cop with big pharma and negotiate down the price to protect the people from being price gouged. What happened is the insurance companies, within a matter of a decade, gobbled up all of these middlemen
Right.
that were supposed to be driving down the cost. And instead of driving down the cost for you, the patient, they negotiated rebates to themselves. And so every product that's covered by your insurance either has a rebate or some sort of incentive that has been negotiated in advance. And so I'll give you an example. Insulin, for example, it costs, I think, $38 to make a vial of insulin, but the average price in America is over $180 something dollars. Some insurances are charging as much as $300 something dollars for this. And somebody goes, well, the insurance covered 80% of it, but the insurance didn't pay the $300 something dollars. They told you that they covered 80%, but they covered 80% of a much lower number. And then that rebate is held at the pharmacy benefit manager, which is the insurance company. And then at the end of the year, when they assess all of your data and records, they're going to go to your employer and negotiate the price of that insurance premium upwards. So your copay goes up, your out-of-pocket expense goes up, your employer's expense to cover you goes up, but they never really paid the price they're showing. It's a
Right.
bait and switch. And they call it a rebate program, but in reality, it's a kickback. Like if it was anywhere else, they would call it a kickback and you'd go to prison. But these have been negotiated, and this is known. This is a known place. And I'll go even further. When I owned a retail pharmacy, and I think I shared this on with the podcast
The
last time.
copay.
Yeah, if a
This
patient
is
comes in
diabolical.
and I know that I can provide them with a drug. I'll give you the example of metformin because it's an easy one. Been on the market 20 years, safe product, used for diabetes and blood sugar insulin response. It's been a great compound that's safe and it's cost effective. My cost on it at a pharmacy was about $2 for a month's supply. I would charge $4 if you were to come in and tell me you don't have insurance. As soon as you tell the pharmacy that you have insurance, there's a gag clause in the United States. That pharmacist is not allowed to disclose to you the cash pay price. All they're allowed to tell you is your copay. So you come in and pay $10 copay for a $4 drug. That $6 doesn't stay with the pharmacy that filled the prescription. That $6 plus the additional dollar of profit go back to the pharmacy benefit manager,
Right.
held in their profit center. And that's how CVS Health made $330 billion last year. And if you think they're not totally screwing over you, the people, the way to see this is the state of Ohio hired 30 forensic auditors and they uncovered $230 million in 12 months with one PBM. Just one. There's 5. Just one PBM in the state of Ohio defrauded taxpayers by $230 million. And nobody's going to jail. But they just basically canceled the contract with the PBM and they're trying to bring everything to the state level back in-house and pull it away. Because what the PBMs are doing is negotiating profits for their own profit centers, not negotiating down the price.
Patience.
Yes. And so then even when people say, well, the government, my Medicare price is this, the old bait and switch with that is they're comparing when they pitch the government on we're going to save you millions of dollars, they're the ones setting the market price. So when they come in and say the price of insulin's $180 a vial, we're going to sell it to you to the government for 20% off. But that was an inflated price. It never should have been the 180. And so when they're banging on the desk saying you're running up the price of healthcare because you're doing a blood test, that's complete bullshit. It's you're hurting our profits because you're doing a blood test and we don't get a kickback on the blood test. We get a kickback on the prescription medicines.
Right. Two things. Um, the drug schedule. You explained this once before that there's like a schedule of drugs, and you may not be getting the drug you need because they aren't making a rebate on it. So let's say that metformin was the gold standard for type 2 diabetes, but I'm prescribing you Jardiance because I get the rebate on it. Am I getting that accurate?
Yeah, so there's
accurately?
tier plans. And
Okay,
so they'll
right.
and what people think is the tier is based off which drug is the most efficacious.
Right.
It's not. The tier is negotiated by the pharmacy benefit manager, which this is where I say the margins are made in the mystery. Even when I was talking to Bobby Kinney, he goes, "What the hell is a pharmacy benefit manager?"
Yeah.
I don't have a pharmacy, and I'm like, "You do. Everybody does." Like 90% of the prescription coverage in America goes through your pharmacy benefit manager. But I want to be clear, that is your insurance company. They've just created a shell company to generate money separate from their books at the insurance level. And so it's a separate company. It's this layers upon layers of confusion and protection and nuances that make it hard to get to the real cost of a drug. And so they don't base the tier pricing on what is the best diabetes drug on the market. The tier one pricing to be on Blue Cross tier one is, did you give them the biggest rebate? Did you negotiate the best price? And that price is often an inflated price.
Yep.
So the PBMs went out and rather than driving down the price, began to negotiate the price up.
Yep.
Could you get us a $200 rebate on insulin? Well, we could, but we'd have to charge you $500. Charge us $500 because at the end of the year, they only paid $300.
Yep.
The $200 rebate's held. They made $200 that month off that patient. Then they charge the employer plus a premium plus the patient. And you start to look at all this, plus all the drugs that are cheaper to pay cash for, that they're charging a markup on through your copay and deductible. And now you start to begin to see the picture of how did they make $300+ billion last year.
Right. It's like we're getting sicker. Shouldn't they be going bankrupt?
Yeah.
But no, they're getting fatter.
Yeah. And that's where I go back to, there's nothing better than having the freedom and the autonomy to educate a patient and make a decision side by side with that patient about what is best for that patient, not what is best for the insurance company or, whoever it is that's profiteering off their sickness.
Right.
But from my experience behind the curtain, the insurance companies and the big pharmaceutical companies are two of the biggest, baddest mobsters out there.
Yeah,
I
the
mean, it's
pharma
scary.
cartel. And I've seen it. One of the doctors that I work with, she with regard to messaging, she calls it medical McCarthyism because if you say something, you're in their bullseye.
Yeah.
So they're terrified into silence, or they spin the narrative to make you, God forbid, you speak out about something like obesity or gender affirming care for kids, you're fat shaming. We all know the game, but these doctors are getting pressurized from every angle. And then Drew Pinsky was on Dr. Drew not so long ago explaining how pain management began. And it's like, God forbid, a doctor didn't prescribe a pain medication. Then they got sued criminally for negligence.
Yeah.
These doctors can't win. I had Dr. Robin Chutkan on talking about why antibiotics are overprescribed. And it's like, well, if you have even the slightest issue for dental work, even though the chances are like 0.00001% you could get an infection, I'm going to give you the antibiotic because I don't want to get sued, even though this will mess you up down the road. But I need it. It's constant ass covering for these guys all the time.
There's every part of healthcare is so fucked, so corrupt. We could talk for 3 days and we wouldn't cover it all. It's literally such a sue-happy society that rather than us playing offense and helping drive healthcare, we're just plugging the dam and
defense.
hiding from like
All
an
the time.
ostrich, burying our head in the sand and hoping that it'll all just go away.
Fuck, did we get so inverted?
Yeah.
Like, how did they manage to manipulate the laws?
Mhm.
And it's like, and own the DOJ. And like everything is so corrupt. It's
Mhm.
disgusting. It's disgusting. Like I try not to go down this rabbit hole. Like I'll
Yeah.
cut my meltdown out because it's just so fucking dystopian. But god damn it, how the
Mhm.
fuck did we get here?
No, it gets frustrating because it's the same with the FDA. If you limit access from one party and allow an open door policy with another party, innately you're going to be skewed by the lens of the data and the information you're given. And if you're only taking in data and information, you and I were talking about just being open-minded and put aside your flag planting to leave a conversation a better person. Maybe I'll learn something from you. We don't have to agree, but maybe I'll learn something from you or you'll learn something from me, and we both leave better, more well-rounded people.
Mhm.
I just think that's humanity. And when we put humans in situations where incentive systems are skewed with dollars, money, and revenue and career opportunities, and then we limit the data and information to only reaffirm and give them confirmation bias in a way that sets them down a path or a trajectory that is going to damage people's lives, it's just not a good recipe for good patient outcomes, good humanity, good opportunities for us to have a fair shot at any of this. And that's the issue is whether the DOJ, the DEA, the FDA, it's all built to fail, unfortunately. And I don't blame any individual or even institution. This system has been put in place, and I just think it's evolved to get to this point where it's pretty corrupt and it's pretty broken, and the incentive systems are wrong.
I know exactly what you mean. And now I need you to solve this problem for everybody.
So the big thing that I see is what Callie's talking about. It's we've got to shift the paradigm. And I think we talked about this last time. Don't view insurance as healthcare. You need to view insurance like car insurance. It's there in the event you total the car,
Major
but
medical.
it is not there to change the oil, rotate the tires, maintain the vehicle. It
Great
doesn't do
analogy.
that.
Right.
You've got to take accountability and sovereignty. Like tough love for a second here.
Do it.
The system is fucked. The food system is not right. The healthcare system is not right. We can sit there and cry about it, or we can take control and action over our own health. And so many people go, well, must be nice that Joe Rogan can afford this. It's to be healthy is not nearly as expensive as it is to be sick. It's not.
It's so true. It's the number
It's
one cause of bankruptcy,
it's
actually.
crazy.
Yeah.
And so, like, even for us, I think a comprehensive blood panel is one of our most expensive. It's $500, but you're spending an hour on the 45 minutes with a clinician doing a deep dive into that panel. It is not even profitable for us. So nobody's getting price gouged. And I would love to drive that down to cheaper and cheaper where everyone can afford it. And the answer to that is to
More
build this
people
life raft,
opt
large
in.
language models,
Okay, I see. I
getting
see.
ahead, AI-based, algorithm-based medicine, monitoring people 24/7. So the vision I have for the future is we don't wait for you to get sick to get well. We prevent you from getting sick. We watch you and monitor you 24. We know your family history, and we can go as deep as you want or as shallow as you want. But to wear a wearable and tie into AI doesn't cost anybody anything. And through that, we can data mine and track. Like I have a sleep aid. I don't know, or 8 Sleep. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Mhm.
Eddie, I don't know if you have one. It's
I don't actually. I
I,
sleep fine, so it's I think anyway.
well, I just love
Hasn't
it
been a
because it tracks. But Whoop does it, Apple Watch does it, so many different things do it. I know how much REM sleep I get, how much deep sleep I get. I know my heart rate variability. I know my max heart rate during the middle of the night. I know all those data sets. Now combine that with knowing over 70 biomarkers. Now combine that with knowing your VO2 max and your heart health. Now combine that with a DEXA, knowing your bone mineral density, your lean muscle mass, your visceral fat, your subcutaneous fat,
Yeah.
and your family history and your lifestyle. Now with all of this comprehensive data, which does not cost much to gather, we now have a true snapshot of you.
And you can
And with
predict.
that, we can begin to predict and protect and help drive health span, which is the real goal. Don't wait to get sick. When we're tracking all of those variables, my hope for the future is Alan's in your pocket and you wake up and Alan says, "Hey, Jillian, I've noticed 3 bad nights of sleep in a row. Not sure if you're dealing with stress.
Mhm.
Have you considered, a supplement like zinc or magnesium? Are you drinking alcohol right now? What has been different?" Yeah, because so many people don't know. Like, I can't tell you how many people don't realize how much alcohol impacts sleep.
Oh
I mean, I hear
God, I
people say all
know.
the time, "I need a nightcap." And it's like one of the worst things you can do for sleep. Eating right before bed, another terrible thing to do right before sleep. Like, there's a lot of just lifestyle changes that your primary care is never gonna know to tell you about because they don't see the full scope of you. And what I love about AI is Alan will never forget. So, like, my clinicians at Wastewell, as great as they are, they've gotta go through your chart the day before they do their consult
Mhm.
with you, re-review your family history, refresh their memory on everything you talked about, try and remember all these data sets. AI will remember, they call it
Okay.
eyes. So the camera, you can give access to the camera. It'll remember what shirt you wore, what color your eyes are. In the future, it's going to be able to diagnose health issues through your retinas and being able to tell different retina dilation and so many different things. So the future is going to
Crazy.
be bright,
Yeah.
I think, as far as driving health span and longevity. But it's not going to ever be that way through the insurance model. I don't see that because the same way I'm touting the benefits of these tools, I am terrified of what big insurance would do with these tools, right? That's why the
'Cause they'll
other pillar
predict
is
and drop
private.
you.
Yes,
Mhm.
private.
Yes.
The last person you want digging through your underwear drawer is the federal government or the insurance companies. And so, with these tools, yeah, they may know in 10 years you're going to have cancer. They may know in 10 years a chronic disease is going to onset. That is why I think it's crucial for that data to be protected for these individuals and not in a way that is accessible to the
Right.
insurance company. And that's where I go back to the smartest thing you can do is to build your own life raft. Do not put your hands in your future and your family's future in the hands of these people that want to profiteer off chronic disease. You're crazy. Take yourself out, do the diagnostic, get proactive, get predictive. There are hundreds of clinics throughout the United States that do exactly what we do. I think there's great clinicians out there, but it's going to take people going to a cash pay model,
Yep.
at least in instances, and do it once. I would implore them, do it one time and tell me that you can't tell a difference in the level of care that you receive.
Okay. Um, I'm listening and I'm intimidated. I don't know how to find that person. I don't know how much it costs monthly. What do you think it would cost the average person over the course of a year for someone like you, Ways to Well,
Yeah.
your company, to take over my
Our
care?
average patient is spending less than $150 a month.
Come on. Shut
Yeah,
up.
it's not, and that's
No
and
way.
yeah, because you do ideally, and again, it's like you have to tell people what does your budget allow. In a dream world, of course, I would recommend quarterly blood work, and it's not because it's a profit center for me. It's because it's more snapshots, it's more measurement tools. It's better allowing us more quickly and rapidly to assess your progress or digression, and it's an important tool in the tool belt. A DEXA and a VO2 max is dirt cheap. I think 100 something dollars for both combined. And you only need one of those once annually at the most. I mean, even if you're doing it every 2 to 3 years, that's better than never doing one. Most people have never had one.
Most people have
But what I
not.
love about a DEXA is it's not somebody doing a pinch test that could be inaccurate. We literally know your lean muscle on your right quad versus your left. We know how much is of your body fat is being stored in your organs, which is another indicator of, chronic disease and risk profile. And it allows us to truly build and project out for you and help drive down, you drive up your health span and drive down the risk of all cause mortality. And it's real and it's quantifiable and it's there. And that's what everyone I think should be doing.
Right.
When people talk about price, this is one of the things I don't remember where I was, but I said, for most people, the most expensive thing they spend money on is their house. The second is their car. How many hours a day are you in your car? Think about that. You're paying what?
I'm like, depends on the city.
$1,800, $500 a month car payment?
Easily.
Like, and some people are paying
Easily.
even more than that. And I look at that and
Easily.
go, this is your only body that you'll ever get. We won the lottery, 250 trillion to 1 that we're here right now alive, breathing. We won the lottery. What are we going to do with this? What are you going to do with this opportunity? Are you going to spend it chronically ill and blame the insurance companies? Or are you going to take accountability and sovereignty and drive your own health? They're not going to help you. I'm sorry. I hate to be the bearer of bad news,
It feels
but
like a
don't
quick
lie to yourself
fix,
and tell
right?
you can't afford to be healthy.
That's the game.
Because whether me or anybody else, you can usually get a battery of these tests for under $500, and you can spend time with a clinician and at least understand your baseline. And if you just did that once a year, then you're talking about what, $20 a month, you know? Why would you not do that deep dive and take a look under the hood? Don't wait for the motor to blow out.
Can everybody see you? What? I know you have 300 employees.
Yeah,
Can
yeah.
you only? I
So,
can't remember the state of the. You were trying to
anybody who's willing
expand. Tell me.
so a lot of the tests we have to do in person, so that's the challenge. So people are like, "Oh, you're only in Texas." I think Waste Well's in 17 or 18 states now. My pharmacy's in 47 states. But for a lot of the DEXA VO2, you can get that anywhere. There's DEXA Fit. There's companies out there in your geographic region. If you look up DEXA Scan or VO2 Max, there are places that do these tests. And we just need the data, and you as the patient just needs the data.
Mhm.
The vision for the future where I want to go is a facility in every major city where we're doing these tests that then tie into the AI, where we're proactively monitoring you 24/7. And the
So
AI
awesome.
isn't backed by my biased viewpoints. It's backed by data and literature and peer-reviewed studies. And so the beauty of Alan is you can ask him, and I'll demo him for you after we're done. But you can literally just ask, and he's on our website. If you go and you look at Alan the Alien and you fill out the info, you can ask him questions like, explain to me GLP-1s and what's the downside. And he will pragmatically break down for you
It's
the
incredible.
risk profiles, but with studies. And you can say, can you provide me with a study on that, Alan? And it's a communication. He's talking to you. And this is today. I'm not a multi-billion-dollar company. I have 300 employees, but we're still a small shop. I can't imagine what Google, what Amazon, what all these people are going to come out with. It's the future. I really do think that is a tool that can really help, if we use it right, really help
Yes.
people.
Right.
But it's providing you with instant answers. And so Alan is in your pocket. Anytime you need anything, you just ask Alan. And so it's like, Alan, hey, what was my heart rate variability? What was it when we did the last test? And what does that mean for all-cause mortality? And he's going to give you all those answers. So you're not having to text my clinician or call my clinician, which will allow me to drive down the cost of healthcare. And then the hope is in the future, if I can allow Alan to do the consult, my biggest expense running this practice is employing all the doctors and nurses. If we could allow one nurse to see 100 people a day instead of 6, now I've just cut the price down to one hundredth
Whatever
of
the
what it
math
was.
is. Yeah.
Because I'm not having to spread the cost of that nurse out amongst those many consults. It drives that cost
That's
down, and the AI is there.
unbelievable.
It's just how soon do we adopt it, and how soon does it become readily implemented in medicine? And I think the answer is going to be a lot faster than people are expecting.
Right now, where do we find everything Ways to Well and Brigham Buhler?
Our Ways to Well Instagram is a good resource. We try to post educational material, information about what's going on at the practice, new treatment modalities. And then waystowell.com is our website. And then just podcasts, that's one of the only media outlets that gives
I
us
know.
the ability to talk about this freely. Because so many of the things we do are either off label or what people would say non-FDA approved treatments. And so you're not allowed to make claims or really go into details, pay for ads, SEO optimize. So many things that are out there when patients say, why have I never heard of this? It's because Google, Facebook, all of those giant conglomerates are being somewhat controlled by governing bodies, and those governing bodies are indirectly or directly being influenced by the big pharmaceutical companies and the big insurance companies.
You want to hear something bizarre? And this is super conspiracy theory all the way. And listen, when Callie was on Tucker's his own juggernaut,
Yeah.
what have you, and he's his own network and he's on X and blah, blah, blah. Out of all the shows I've done, Callie, the main show, got 13,000 views. Hit Dr. Hazen did 161,000 in 6 days. Casey's been on 4 days, already at like 70,000. And I was like, okay, no way.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Yeah.
And this is the week that RFK is talking about how Callie came on to advise his campaign and got the FDA, the USDA.
I guarantee you, because I can tell you,
I was like,
true story, during COVID, we were prescribing ivermectin and it was a tool in the tool belt. Again, I'm not here to tell you get vaccinated, not my place. I'm here to provide you with resources, information, and the tools to help you.
Right.
That's our job. And you make the decision for yourself what's right for you. We got shadow banned legitimately. And I know because we couldn't do anything. And we ended up having to message Facebook and Instagram and all these media platforms. And finally, somebody responded and told us, you're basically on the naughty list and you're not allowed to do any paid ads.
Right.
You'll be deplatformed essentially, where you won't show up on people's algorithms because you're spreading dangerous information. Dangerous white paper peer-reviewed studies? Like, I don't understand. How is science now dangerous? And when they say follow the science, you tell me to follow the science, but then you try to suppress the science that doesn't meet your narrative. That's not truth. That's not honesty. That's not integrity. And that can't be an unbiased platform. And that's where I go, I don't know what the answer is, but suppressing people's freedom of speech is not historically been a good answer.
Because it's like, oh, crazy, tin hat, this isn't real, shadow banning is a conspiracy. And then he came out and was like, sorry.
No, I saw that.
And the funny part is I had Michael Schellenberger on to talk about the Facebook files. He's like, oh, there's not just a Twitter files.
Yeah.
We had the Facebook files. And the White House told Facebook, Meta, to censor all this.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh, he's crazy. He's a liar. Schellenberger's nuts. And then I had Dr. Sabine Hazen on, who was doing research on ivermectin as a therapeutic and hypothesizing on whether or not it would work and why. The woman has worked for 30 years for drug companies. Banned. Kicked off. Same way you're talking about. And then Zuckerberg came out and was like, yeah, it's no choice. And where's the sorry?
It's crazy.
Where's the gosh? You guys were right. Oh, I can't believe. Where's the outrage?
Another crazy part of that is we literally got a letter from the Texas State Pharmacy Board telling us we're not allowed to stock ivermectin anymore.
Based on what?
And that if any doctor were to prescribe it off label, that we're supposed to basically turn in their information. And I'm like, this is crazy. You have an opioid crisis going on. We're allowed to stock Oxycontin. We're allowed to stock opioids, but you're not allowing us to stock a drug that's been on the market for 25 plus years and is unbelievably safe. I mean,
you're allowed to
I get promoting off label and making a claim, and there's extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. But historically, clinicians have been allowed to prescribe medications off label in a decision alongside with a patient if they feel that in their best clinical judgment, it is what is most beneficial for the patient. And that has never been interfered with. So for it to get interfered with on something as benign as ivermectin, I'm not here to say it does or doesn't work. It's irrelevant it's immaterial to the discussion. It is still that clinician's choice and that patient's choice to decide what is best for them. So why were we allowing all of these various regulatory hurdles? It's just crazy to me. And you wonder, where is all this coming from and how? And I to this day, I still look back at all that and go, that was a crazy time. And it really did.
I don't think it's over.
I know.
I don't. I think it's just ramping up. And it's a test to see like how much will be tolerated, how much will be allowed to let slide. And that's why, when you go back and to all the people who called that kind of stuff crazy and silly and tin hat and conspiracy theory. And when I go back and did you look at the emails that came out in the congressional hearings from the NIH like Morenz, Fauci, Collins, avoiding FOIA requests, taking kickbacks from EcoHealth Alliance for grants, like back channeling all of these conversations.
And not to mention the patents that the NIH holds that these people get paid on for the rest of their
Yes,
lives.
hiding in plain sight. There was a whole news segment on MSNBC about how Moderna was at war with the NIH over who profits off the vaccine patent. And the thing is, I have no idea if the vaccine's good, but I personally don't know. And I'm not a doctor, and I haven't really looked into it. That said, the email chain should alarm you from the NIH. And they're like, well, why does it matter? It's over. Because what the
It's
fuck
not,
is
you're right. It's
going
not over
on?
because it's just evolving.
Yes.
And the hope it gave me is it did seem to wake up a lot of people. I do feel like there was a lot of trust lost in, I hate to say it, in science, in our governing officials, and in the healthcare juggernaut
Yes.
that we live in, the
You're
sick
right.
care system. People now question it. They're like, wait a second, I don't know if I believe that.
And that's why the good news is that you can circumvent it affordably and accessibly, thanks to people like you. That's the upside. Callie would want us.
And that's what Callie's talking about. Their
Yes, Callie's
message is like diet, nutrition,
Yes.
lifestyle. Like these should be cornerstones of these discussions, not an afterthought.
Right.
Not here's a drug and we'll talk about diet and nutrition next time you're in, which never happens. And so, that's the gist of it is proactive, predictive. Take the time to do a deep dive, understand your health, take sovereignty over your health. The good news is you're here. You're alive. You won the lottery. Like we got this shot. Don't squander it. Don't just trust these people blindly. I will guarantee you will be one of those statistics if you stay in this system. This is the system. This isn't all of a sudden every American got fat and lazy.
Right.
That's just not true. That's the lie that we're being told. The truth is the system failed you from top to bottom. From food to diet to nutrition to healthcare to clinical training to every step along the way, the system has been corrupted, abused, and manipulated. And now we're here. And so we can argue about how we got here.
Yeah.
We can argue about the best way out. While everyone's arguing, I prefer to take my healthcare into my own hands. And I'm still going to be an advocate, an ally, and a huge proponent to Bobby and RFK and to Callie and what they're trying to do because it's going to take time. And I do think for the first time ever, we're headed the right way and there's an opportunity there. And I hope to God those guys pull it off and get us in a better position as a country. But in the meantime, with my personal life and my friends and my family, I try to tell them, take it out of everyone else's hands and just take ownership, take accountability.
Amen. Fucking A, Briggs. Keep doing it.
Yeah, thank you for
Keep
everything.
doing it,
I know
babe.
we talked a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Keeping it real with Jillian Michaels.